What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we are going to be putting out our tier list for the second go around for Regulation F that is coming up in the next month or so. Alright, so again, there's still something to play for Regulation H, right? We got a couple of regionals coming up in these next couple of weekends, and we'll be on top of that, of course, but we still want to put out early Regulation F content, so this way we can get you guys started and get a step in the door, so this way when the format officially goes live, even though there's technically no ladder, but at least when it goes live for events, you still have an advantage over someone who has no idea what they're trying to do. All right, but of course, if you are that person who have no idea what to really try or play in Regulation F, then these next few videos are going to be for you. Starting here with our tier list, so we're gonna change slightly what we do and how we present the information. Right, so normally I would scroll all the way down, right, and I would grab some mons, and then I would just scroll all the way back up here and put them in either of these S, A, B, or C tiers, right? But it was mentioned in one of my other tier list videos where I can just, you know, put a level in between the C tier and the don't use tier, and in this way I don't have to waste time scrolling up and down, you know, dragging icons and putting them in their tier. So I'm gonna save some time by doing this. So everything you see right here, right, these are the Pokemon that we're going to be ranking, right? And then everything you see down here, this is basically the don't use tier, where we're not really going to be talking about these guys because they are not, you know, part of the current meta in Regulation F, at least where we last left off the first time around, okay? So if you see your favorite Pokemon here in the don't use tier, I'm sorry, it just doesn't have that impact right now in Regulation F, or it did not have the impact yet where we last left off in Regulation F. Now, can some things in the D tier work their way into the meta? Absolutely, right? Everything can, you know, make its way at some point into something that's usable if there is a set that is explored by someone and it can get a tournament result here and there. But for the time being, we are going to be ranking these Pokemon because these are the ones that have the top tournament results, you know, from the last few months of Regulation F. Okay, so we're going to be building our tier list based off of that, right? Now, that being said, what are the tiers in our tier list? So first of all, at the top here, we have the S tier. These are what we call meta defining, right? They're the best of the best, as we also like to say. They got the best stats, best typing, best ability, okay? Usually these are also going to be like staples that you can slap on into, you know, most teams, and then it just instantly makes your team better, right? And then after that, it's just everything else trying to, you know, cater to those things, right? So after that, we got the A tier, you know, not nearly as dominant as the S tier, but still very strong and consistent options. You'll find these, you know, probably about 7 or 8 out of 10 games if you were to play, you know, 10 games on Showdown, you know, in this format here. But again, just like the S tier, very, very solid options, proven results. And then after that, I've got the B tier, but usually I like to take my B tier and break it up into 2 different tiers. I got the high B tier and the low B tier, and really the difference just comes down to, you know, typing or maybe an ability just isn't as great, or, you know, the stat distribution not as good, even though it might have a good toolkit, right? These are still very, very good Pokemon, right? And you'll still see them on, you know, some teams, right, where they have multiple roles. But overall, you know, they're just outclassed by the S and the A tier, okay? Then after that, we've got the C tier, okay? Now, this is what we call the niche tier. This does not mean they're bad Pokemon. This means that niche, right? The word niche means they have one job and one job only, and they can do that job very, very well, okay? So it really just depends on a certain team that can really bring out the most of it. These are not very splashable options, and outside of that one team, it just isn't all that good. Now, again, like I said, doesn't mean they're bad Pokemon. They're still very good on a certain team. You just have to make sure it's the right team for that Pokemon, because again, they may not have the best, you know, stats, or they may not have the best, you know, ability or typing or whatever, and they need a lot of support to really excel. But if you have a team of 5 Pokemon and you need something for a very specific matchup that you can't find elsewhere, this is where you're gonna find this C tier, right? So that's really what it comes down to. So now after this, now let's start talking about how we can rank these. Okay, and now also before we start ranking them, I do want to mention one other thing. So you might notice that in the D tier, you might find a Pokemon here that was like really, really good in Regulation H, and then all of a sudden it just drops down here. that's because now the power creep has risen again. And that means there's going to be other Pokemon that are going to do this job a little bit better. And also at the same time, there's going to be Pokemon that are now present in the meta that can kind of just invalidate these options just because they weren't around in Regulation H, but now all of a sudden they are around. So again, what does that mean? You know, you got the Paradox Pokemon back again, and you also have Legends back again. So stuff like Fluttermane and Urshifu are back, right? And these two Pokemon alone can invalidate a lot of different things, and all of a sudden you went from usable in Regulation H all of a sudden to not being usable or not nearly as usable in Regulation F because the power creep has risen because of options like this. Okay, I just wanted to mention that last thing there. All right, but now we can start ranking these you know, accordingly, and we have a lot to talk about here, but at least we can save some time with the scrolling now that we have it set up like this. All right, so let's start here with Venusaur. So I think Venusaur we can just easily put here into the C tier, the niche tier. Really, it just comes down to those Torkoal Sun teams, and sometimes you'll even find Ferrograph on those teams. But outside of the Sun stuff, you're not really going to see Venusaur as like a main staple in the meta. Ideally, you'll find more options like Amoonguss and Rillaboom, of course. And this has always been true in Scarlet and Violet. This is not Dynamax Sword and Shield, right? Where you can just G-Max Venusaur and just go for that G-Max Vinelash stuff. That's not the case in Scarlet and Violet, of course. So through almost every other format, it's either don't use Venusaur or it's really only solid on some of those niche Sun teams there. Raichu, again, it did have a niche, you know, with stuff like Miraidon because of Lightning Rod there. You do get a pretty fast fake out, of course. You do also get access to Electro Webs and Yuri Impulse stuff. So there is some niche for it, right? But all in all, it's not necessarily amazing. Yes, you can use this for the now present Raging Bolt, of course, and that's really what you want it for. Because outside of that, there isn't really any like dominant Electro type other than like the niche Regieleki, which we're gonna put in the niche here in a second, right? But at the very least, you have it there. And then after this, you got Clefairy and Clefable. So I think we can rank it like this, where you still have Clefable, you know, doing what Clefable was doing in Regulation H, right? It's still this solid, bulky, unaware user, okay, that can ignore these stat boosts and then ignore like fighting coverage and whatnot. And, you know, something like Raging Bolt, where you can kind of just redirect the Draco Meteor stuff and just kind of ignore the Calm Mind boost, right? So there's the niche there, right? But overall, there's better redirectors that you can be using, right? Like stuff like Ogerpon, or even Amoonguss, and then technically still Clefairy. We're gonna put it slightly above the Clefable this time around, just because Friendguard is still really, really solid, right? So at the very least, Clefairy can offer a little bit more bulk than the Clefable, even though it doesn't get unaware. Friendguard is still busted, right? And Friendguard can make a huge difference when power creep is a little bit higher, right? So I think this is exactly where we want it. Then after that, we have the Alolan Ninetales, and again, Alolan Ninetales' role hasn't really changed, right? You're still this weather setter that can give you access to screens, and again, you want this against the Sun stuff, right? With photosynthesis being more of a thing now in Regulation F, where it wasn't that option in Regulation H because there were no Paradox Pokemon there. So you still want the Alolan Ninetales, and on some teams, right, depending on the meta and where you want to put it. So I still think low B tier is correct. I think in Regulation H, this thing could have even been in the A tier or very high B tier, but in F, I think we can drop it down a tier just because there's a little bit more options. Like Ogerpon can pressure it more, right? And then now you have another fairy type like Fluttermane, right? So you're not starved for fairy types in this type of format, right? Because you have Fluttermane back yet again, and you have the Terra Fairy Raging Bolt, which again can be, you know, another fairy type technically. All right, now we have options like this. Now we have Hisuian Arcanine, and then we have regular Arcanine. So I think regular Arcanine can just, again, be in the C tier. If you really wanted a fire type Intimidator, Incineroar is just most times it's going to be better 9 times out of 10. And then the Hisuian one is actually really, really solid in this type of meta. I'm going to put it here in the A tier. And you can form a lot of nice, solid Fire, Water, Grass cores with Hisuian Arcanine, especially with Urshifu, right? And, you know, this Pokemon... oh, hold on. Let me just put a new Regulation F tier, right? So if you put in the Arcanine here, I think you can get nice FWG cores, you know, with something like the Water Pond here. And you can kind of start with a core like this, right? And then you can just add stuff like Landorus, Fluttermane there, Icy Wind support, and then just build off of that, right? So but you can hit all 3 cores with just 2 Pokemon here. And that's really what I like with these guys. And more about the Water Pond in a second when we get to it. But again, at least with the Hisuian variant, you know, you get a strong, hard-hitting fire type. You also get access to Rock Slide, which is kind of nice against some of these flying types, like another Tornadus that's more active in the meta now again. And you know, usually these are these choice band variants where they're gonna want to hit hard, especially. And then you can partner this with something like a Chenpao now, right? So you're gonna get more value out of Arcanine this time around than you did in the previous format, right? Because now Chenpao Arcanine can also hit relatively hard too, right? And the band variant with Extreme Speed is also pretty good because again, now you have the benefit of Sword of Ruin, right? And the same thing can be said with Dragonite. When we get to it, we'll talk about it. But the same thing, now that Chenpao's back in the meta, a lot of these physical options are gonna, you know, skyrocket a little bit. I wouldn't say skyrocket, but rise in the meta, right? Not like to the point where they're like, you know, supremely broken. But that's one idea that you have to keep in mind now in this format. Chenpao is back, so you're gonna see this a lot with a lot of physical hitters. Like, and then the prime example is Urshifu. Chenpao Urshifu is super dominant in this type of meta. Okay, but anyway, back here. So I think an aggressive attacker with Intimidate support goes a long way. So I like it here in the A tier. All right, don't play this thing. The Alolan Muck, this is just for those minimized shenanigans. Yeah, you can do that if you want. That's like annoying for ladder, but don't bring this to a toy. All right, the Iron Leaves. So again, I almost want to put this into the don't use tier, but there are some niches for it, right? Especially if you can add Indeedee to this, where you can at least be super aggressive with your psychic moves. But again, like I said, a better grass type are the Ogerpons and the Rillabooms and the Amoonguses. You can get some aggression here, but it just gets Intimidate cycled by an Incineroar, right? And now that there's Landorus, that's even worse, right? So now you're not doing as much damage either. So yeah, I'll just put it in the niche tier. You can get some Psy Spam use out of it, but you know, there's better Pokemon for that. So Goldengo in Regulation H was like this S tier behemoth, but now that you have Chenpao, you know, Fluttermane, Urshifu, Dark Urshifu, might I add, back in the meta, like all these dark types from the ruins, they're back, right? So that means the Goldengo, not only does it get outsped, but now you're just getting hit by these super effective hitters, you know, with the Shadow Balls, the Wicked Blows. All right, and even Roaring Moon's back too, right? So because all these options are back, you can't really say that Goldengo's in the S tier any longer in this type of format. But that does not mean it's going to be chopped liver. Goldengo can still be a threat on some of these hyper-offensive teams, but it really needs the right team. Now, that being said, we have seen some teams with something like this where we have options like the Roaring Moon, the Hisuian Arcanine, and the Goldengo. This has worked, right? And then you can add something like an Amoonguss here, just because, again, you can still go for this nasty plot setup with Make It Rain, and you do get access to Tailwind here with Roaring Moon, and then you still get the Intimidate support with Goldengo, and like imagine Incin, Goldengo, Amoonguss stuff. So even if you don't use the Hisuian Arcanine, if you do have the Incineroar, this is already like a starting core for a Roaring Moon balance team, and this can work too, right? But again, it's just not as splashable as some of the teams in Regulation H because a lot of these options are back in the meta. But that being said, I still think Goldengo is still a very solid mon. All right, I'm still gonna put it here in the A tier just because, again, it has had some strong results still in the format, just not the S tier that it was in Regulation H. Okay, Wo-Chien, I would say, again, Wo-Chien is the most passive of the Ruin Pokemon, but it's still annoying to deal with, especially with like Ruination, Snarl, and Leech Seed stuff. That being said, it's still relatively niche, not nearly as splashable as the Fluttermane, Chi-Yu stuff, and even Chenpao, where you can partner them next to a lot of special attackers and a lot of physical options. Wo-Chien is just more of a, you know, slow the game down, damage mitigator kind of thing, right? You're not really bringing this for damage. So with that being said, I think C tier is correct for it. And Chenpao here, this is going to be one of our S tier meta-defining Pokemon. Yes, absolutely. Again, Sword of Ruin is strong. The speed tier is great. It's right up there with Fluttermane as well. Great partners with Arcanine, Dragonite, Urshifu, Rillaboom. Okay, any top tier physical threat all of a sudden just gets better because of Chenpao. So not only can you deal big damage yourself, but now you're helping your allies also deal more damage too. And, you know, there are some pretty cool Chen Pao sets that you'll see running around in the format. And by the way, you can even add Chen Pao to you know, a team like this. But sometimes you'll see some ideas like Ruination or even Icy Wind, right? Or even Ice Shard, right? It's not just your Sacred Sword, Icicle Spinner, Icicle Spear stuff. I'm sorry, Icicle Crash is what I meant, not Spear. But again, something like this is, you know, some interesting set might be explored a little bit more in Reg F. But again, its role is pretty clear and straightforward. You're just trying to make your physical hitters do a little bit more damage. And Priority Sucker Punch goes a long way because you get to invalidate some Flutter Mains, forcing them to run bulk, right? Because if they don't run any bulk, then they just die, right? Because Sucker Punch is that strong, right? And Flutter Main's physical bulk is that weak, okay? But yeah, moving on. We've got the Ting Lu here. So, you know, even though Ting Lu, quote unquote, can be passive just like Wo Qian, you're going to get more mileage out of Ting Lu just because, again, of its typing and some of the ideas that you can do with Ting Lu. So first of all, you are this ground dark typing, which again is really nice into Raging Bolt, okay? And with Ting Lu, let me take some of these options off on the board here, right? Because, you know, Ting Lu has multiple roles in this format here, right? So here we go, Ting Lu, right? Of course, you have access to Ruination, right? So free chip damage there, and then you also get access to Snarl. This is annoying for something like a Raging Bolt, right? Because again, if Raging Bolt wants the big damage with boost energy or the Calm Mind stuff, you should just Snarl it and keep it at bay a little bit. And then of course you have Vessel of Ruin where, you know, the damage coming out from these special attackers just isn't all that much. Then you add the fact that you can have a super effective ground type damage, right? And then that makes it a little bit more threatening into the Raging Bolt because again, 110 base attack is not chopped liver, all right? Then at the same time, you also get access to stuff like Sand Tomb where you get to trap things, right? And then all of a sudden you're taking chip damage over time. And then one of the most annoying things that is relevant in this format is now you can partner this with Dondozo. And now Ting Lu Dozo, hopefully I don't trigger any bad memories, but this is a thing again, right? Because again, with Dondozo, remember the Yawn stuff, the Yawn Fissure stuff, right? That's a thing again. And if you can add a trapping move with Yawn, that is strong because now you can't switch out and now you're just going to go to sleep. And these things are super bulky, right? Because again, think about it. Dondozo's physical defense, excellent, right? 115, 180, 150 HP. The special defense isn't all that good, but that's why you have this thing, right? Because with the Ting Lu, things aren't doing as much special attack damage, which means this base 65 is actually a little bit more just because you have Ting Lu partner next to it, right? So Yawn, along with the Ting Lu, super annoying to deal with. And you'll see it, if you haven't seen it already on Showdown Ladder, it's going to be one of those teams or one of those combos you have to be aware of. All right, then we've got Roaring Moon here. Again, very solid option, just like we were talking about earlier. A tier for sure. Again, Tailwind support, knockoff pressure, at, you know, Acrobatics, Terra Flying. It can be a really, really big hitter. Sometimes you do have the Dragon Dance set, and you have to kind of decide if that is something that you want to do with Roaring Moon, right? Do you want a D-Dance set? Because if you do, then it's going to be a super aggressive mod, but maybe you give up Tailwind in exchange for that, or maybe you give up Protect and have both. It really just depends on the player, but again, the Dragon Dance option / Tailwind is something that people like to do with Roaring Moon. And again, 139 base attack is still very, very solid. 119 speed also, okay, goes really well with something like, you know, Gouging Fire or even Chen Pao here. Something that, you know, can help it boost and do more damage, right? So there is that. And then just, you know, not an aggressive, hard-hitting knockoff it goes a long way. You know what this thing can do with Incineroar. But now imagine this, but even harder because, you know, better damaging stat here. So welcome back, Roaring Moon. And then you have something like this, the Iron Valiant, and, you know, again, had a niche role back in Regulation G with stuff like Maridon because of the terrain. I still think it's relatively niche here, but where do I want to put it? Do I want to put it a little bit higher? Do I want to keep it in the niche tier? I still think in the niche tier is correct. Again, you know, the Iron Valiant, again, super cool design, by the way. Where are you? Yeah, so you have Spirit Break against stuff like a Roaring Moon, right? Or against something like a Raging Bolt. And then you are a Fairy type, so you're not going to be taking Dragon Pulse or Dragon Draco Meteor damage, right? So there's that. So you can put pressure onto these Raging Bolts, right? Then you also have Wide Guard, which is really useful against Fluttermane, Chiyu stuff, because they can't go for Dazzling Gleam plus Heat Wave combinations. Then you have something like Close Combat, where you can pressure Incineroars and Roaring Moons. So you got some ideas that you can do with Iron Valiant. I won't write it off. And then you also get access to Trick Room too, right? So if you really want to use the Iron Valiant that way, of course, yes. Otherwise, there are other better Trick Room users. But at least with this set, it gives you some idea onto a particular team there, right? So I'm going to put it here in the niche tier. I think that's a good spot for where it belongs. Then we get Chiyu here. So, man, now the question is, do I put this in the A tier or do I put this in the S tier? Okay. I'm going to put Fluttermane in the S tier when we get to it, right? But the question is, do I put Chiyu in the A tier? It's close. All right, is it meta defining? It is if there was a tier between S and A, that's exactly where I would put the Chiyu. I'll come back to this. I'm gonna put it in like this really, really high A tier for now. But I'll come back to this. I think, you know, it's really good with Fluttermane, right? And outside of it, it's still good. It's just, is it as good? I'm not sure. Again, the Sun stuff, you know, with Sunny Day, it's gonna be really solid with Tornadus teams. Right, already, this is what I'm thinking with Chiyu, right? Right off the bat, this is what a lot of people are going to be doing right away. Like Tornadus with Sunny Day, along with Chiyu. Okay, where are you, Chiyu? And then, of course, we have the Fluttermane over here, right? This is like one of the premier hyper-offensive combos that you're going to be seeing in the format, right? So now the question is, you know, do we put this in the S tier? I may put this at the end, but for now, I'm going to keep it right here at the front of the A tier. All right, Walking Wake, again, another Paradox Pokemon, but again, not nearly as good as some of the others. It's just like a nuker. There's no, like, it doesn't get disruption or that much support ideas. It's just, you know, Hydro Steam, Draco Meteor, Life Orb, Protect. That's it, right? That's really all it comes down to. Water Dragon typing here. So at the very least, I think we can just keep this in the niche tier. I mean, outside of that, I don't really know a whole lot else. Like, again, if you really needed a big damaging special attacker, there's better options, but I still think it can find its way on some of these Sun teams if you really need it. But find me a case where you can use this over something like a Raging Bolt or something else to partner with the Fluttermane, right? I don't know, but hey, at least you're fast, right? You can hit hard, but you do need the Life Orb idea, right? So there's that. Okay. After this, we're gonna come up on the Ogerpon suit. So, where are we? Yeah, all right. So the Sinistra again, also here, in the niche tier. I think this is also like correct here. Sinistra's role hasn't really changed. It's always going to do the same job that it does in every single format. They're gonna have this bulky Trick Room setter with Rage Powder, and you also have access to Strength Staff, right? So it's a jack of all trades. You get a Redirector, you get a Speed Control Mon, you get healing, right, with Hospitality, of course. It's a thing with like Galarian Moltres too, right? Which again also has relevance in the meta here. But outside of the healing capabilities, it's actually not too bad into stuff like Urshifu, right? Where you can just redirect a lot of the Surging Strike stuff and then potentially burn physical attackers. So at the very least, you do have, you got stuff going for it. So I still think C tier is correct for where we want it. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of cases where Amoonguss is just a better redirector. And at the very least, Pollen Puff and Spore is also busted as well, right? And then here we go, Okie Dokie. Again, I'm going to put this into like B-. I think this is like okay. It's very good against Incineroar, which is what a lot of teams want it for, right? And then you got a pretty good damaging stat here. So let me see this Okie Dokie here, right? With the Guard Dog, again, you're immune to Intimidated. And at the same time, look, 128 attack here, 88 HP, 86 special defense, 150. So like its bulk is actually really good. Then you add something like Assault Vest here, and now it becomes hard to break. Of course, you have to watch out for something like a Landorus, for example, right? With the Earth Power stuff, or like the Size Spam shenanigans with Okie Dokie, right? But if you can just find a way around that, again, like I said, it needs support. Then it actually ends up being a really, really solid mon here, right? Because of all this bulk. And again, that 128 attack stat goes a long way there. But this is like basically another way to feature an anti-intimidate mon onto your team if it's not King Gambit, right? Okie Dokie can do that for you. All right, now we'll get into the Ogerpons and some of these other paradox options and some of these legendary birds. All right, for the regular Ogerpons here, well, not regular, but this Ogerpon, I think you can, I don't think it's as good as some of the others, but the one selling point with the original vanilla Ogerpon is that it does get Defiant, right? And it does get access to an item where the others are forced to hold a mask. So I've seen some Sash Ogerpon, I've seen some Life Orb Ogerpon, and the other thing is that this Ogerpon, it also gets access to like ground and fighting moves, right? So if I just put this on the screen real quick, right? So 110 base speed is pretty good there, but again, you still get access to Stomping Tension, which again, some of them also do. And then Superpower is also really, really solid here. I've seen the Superpower, all right, do some pretty good damage here. And you know, when you do have that +1 against the Incineroar, this could actually just KO it immediately, right? And again, you have the Sash, you have the Life Orb item that you can always slap onto this. So you'll see it on a lot of Tornadus teams, especially, right? So I have seen some teams like this where you do have these four. So at the very least, yeah, I do like this Ogerpon here. I'm gonna say, where do I want to put? I'm gonna say in like this tier, the B tier, but like somewhat almost like high B tier, but I'm gonna put in the low B tier for now. The Wellspring Ogerpon, on the other hand, is actually very, very good. Okay, this again, Water Absorber is really solid against Urshifu, and at the same time, you can deal super effective damage back with your Grass move. You get a nice special defense boost, which means that's really nice against stuff like Raging Bolt and Flutter Mane, for that matter. Of course, you do have to watch out when you do Terra it, because the Raging Bolt is an electric type at the end of the day. But still, the stats that it gets with that +1 special defense boost, along with being that bulky redirector, means it's a really, really solid option. And again, like we said, it's very nice into the Water Urshifu, absolutely, right? So at the very least, you can definitely put this up here in the A tier. You can almost, if anything, put it within the S tier, but I'm not ready to put it there just yet. I still think high A tier is correct for where it's supposed to be right now. Same thing here with the Heart Flame, right? You can make either argument for either of these to be within the S tier. They are, well, of course, they are meta defining for sure, right? The Ogerpons are very good in this type of format, especially when you don't have like the big legends, you know, stuff like Miraidon in the play here. So they're even better now, right? So you could even put them in the S tier. You can make an argument, but for now, I think A tier is actually like correct for where we want it. Again, when you Terra this thing, it does get an attack boost, right? So harder hitting moves than some of the other Ogerpons, especially, right? Terra Fire means you also get to resist the fairy type attacks from a Flutter Mane, for example. And well, you could already do that, you know, even without the Terra. But with the grass typing, you're neutral to the water damage, so Urshifu won't quite kill you if you invest correctly in your bulk. And you still have a grass move, right, that you can use against it if you can, right? So I do like the Heart Flame, and again, partner this, like I was saying earlier. So if I have the Ogerpon Heart Flame, right, I can easily just do something like this, where I can partner this with Urshifu Searching Strikes, right? So I still achieve my Fire, Water, Grass core with these two Pokemon, and that's the other big selling point with Ogerpons, right? You can get these FWG cores just by using two types of Pokemon here. So yeah, without a doubt, I'm gonna put that right there. All right, Archelodon. Does anything change with Archelodon? No, you can still use it on rain teams. Now you have also access to it Tornadus with Rain Dance. You're not completely reliant on Pelipper, right? So there's the Archelodon itself hasn't really changed. You're still going to see a lot of the Assault Vest Stamina stuff. But I don't think it's, again, the same dominance that it was in Regulation H, because again, you got Chenpao back with Sacred Sword. You also got Urshifu with close combat stuff. So yes, you can get all these defense boosts, which is going to help you, right? But now that you have some of these harder hitters in play, it loses slight value. I still think it's very, very good. I'm going to put it right up here in the high B tier. I think that's correct there. Maybe even like low A tier, but I don't think it's that, it doesn't have like a huge drop off, right? It's still like pretty solid there. It's still going to be one of the mainstays within the meta, without a doubt. Okay. Gouging Fire. So I think this is also a really good option here. Again, the house support is really nice, right? I think A tier can be good. You'll see it a lot with King Gambit, especially, and something like this with Rillaboom. and you'll find these cores a lot. Let me just take away some of this stuff here. This is a very easy starting core, right? With Gouging Fire, Gambit, Rillaboom, and then you can even add something like Flutter Mane here. So now all of a sudden you got a Dragon Fairy Steel core, right? With Gouging Fire and King Gambit and Flutter Mane here. And again, with Gouging Fire, the main selling point is the Howl boost, right? So now you can make this hit harder. Then the Gambit can also hit quite hard, right? With the Howl boost. And then, of course, you get access to stuff like Breaking Swipe, which again is really nice against a lot of these physical attackers, like a Dragonite, like a Chenpal, like a Rillaboom, for example. And then even like the Ursalunas too, right? It's like active form of Intimidate because you're actually dealing damage now. And then you also get access to Heat Crash, which can one-shot a lot of Flutter Manes, right? And this is where like you have to, invest enough attack where you can do that. We'll speak about that when we release our Gouging Fire team building video, but again, this is another thing that you can do with these guys. So just pay attention to that, and then you can usually just slap on liners to something like this, right? So congratulations, you have an easy 5-man core for a Gouging Fire team, right? But again, don't forget, Breaking Swipe does deal super effective damage to Raging Bolt, even though you don't really care about physical attack. You're still taking a Dragon type move, right? It's still going to be super effective damage. So and you don't care about the Assault Vest because you're not a special attacker. So the Raging Bolt still has to be careful a little bit. Can it do super effective damage back to you? Absolutely, because you are still also a Dragon type too. So this is where Flutter Mane is a nice complement in that sense too. Okay, that being said, imagine Gouging Fire with some of these Ogerpons, right? So imagine like the Wellspring Ogerpon or even the Heart Flame, where again, now all of a sudden the Ogerpon gets a special defense boost, and now it can get an attack boost because Gouging Fire Click Howl, for example, right? So that's the other thing that you have to take an advantage of, right? You enable your allies because you have access to these Howl moves, and again, Heat Crash, like we said, is also quite nice here. There are some other niche sets that you can do, like you can even do like Flare Blitz and whatnot. But other than that, I still think the set right here is where we want it. Burning Bulwark, of course, right? On contact, you cause burn, which is again very useful against certain cases. So you have to be careful when you target the Gouging Fire with your physical moves there. And again, I think it's in a great spot. I'm gonna put it in A tier for sure. If anything, you can even drop it down to the high B tier. But I do think Gouging Fire is gonna be one of the main players in Reg F. I almost want to put it in the high B tier, but I think right now A is okay. Raging Bolt. Now we have our second S tier mon. This will be on a lot of thumbnails for Regulation F for sure. Again, we released our team building video with that. Again, popular sets with the Assault Vest, popular sets with the Calm Mind stuff, with the Fake Outs, with the Redirection. Raging Bolt, the stat distribution is excellent, right? Look at the damage stat, 137 special attack, good bulk, Photosynthesis boosts its damage even further, right? Priority Thunderclap, for example. So you don't even care about speed because you always have that priority move, so you always have pins in certain cases, right? Or you can just set up Calm Minds and start clicking Thunderbolts and Dragon Pulses and whatnot, and Raging Bolt all of a sudden looks pretty dominant there. This is why you need ground types. This is why you have to also play around the Thunderclaps a little bit. But again, bulk, yes, great into the Ogerpons because again, you resist fire with a grass stuff, okay, and then you deal good damage into them because you have a big stat, and then you can boost your damage further by going for Calm Mind. So you're getting stats, right? That's the thing with Raging Bolt. You're increasing your stats, right? Because you have Calm Mind access. And then, of course, be super bulky on the other side with the Assault Vest. Anyway, S tier for sure, no questions asked. Now we are getting to a couple of other interesting Pokemon here. So Iron Boulder, yeah, it has that Urshifu like a bit, but it's not Urshifu, obviously. You still need ways to support it. I'm gonna say it's C tier. It's only gonna be on certain teams there. It's not a popular pick. It's not chopped liver, but you do need to work hard to make it work. You need a lot of support for it. This one, Iron Crown. So one of the archetypes that you'll see right now is Iron Crown Size Fam, and this is what it looks like. This is one of the premier teams. And when we do a team building video on this is going to be one of the cores here. Tornadus, Iron Crown, right, with the Indeedee, for the second terrain. So this way you can click the Expanding Force idea, right? And then you'll have something like Regidrago here. Where are you? Yeah, so there you go. This is like the key core of Iron Crown Side Spam. Then you'll probably add something like an Ogre Pioneer, for example, or Landers for whatnot. The other two is up for grabs, but at the very least you have this. And you know what's really good about Iron Crown is you can get a speed boost, which means you can be faster than Chen Pao and go for Tachyon Cutter, and it hits twice, right? So you can get past the Sash, and then you can KO it because you have Tachyon Cutter. All right, that being said, watch out, because again, you still are a Psychic type, so you're still prone to like Dark type damage. So you do have to be aware of that, right? With all the Flutter Mains and the Shadow Balls and the Chiyus going for Dark Pulses and whatnot. So that's something to still be aware of, right? But at the end of the day, I still think Iron Crown Side Spam is pretty solid. Again, look at the stats that you have here, like 122 special attack, 100 defense, 108 speed def there. That 98 speed tier is important because take a look at this, right? Let me show you this. Guess what that outspeeds? Urshifu, right? Urshifu is at 97, Iron Crown is at 98. Huge difference. Very important because that means your expanding force goes first before the Urshifu gets to hit you. And that is a big selling point in my opinion. All right. I don't know right now if this is, you know, high B tier or the A tier. I'm going to say high B tier. This might change later, but I think that's correct. It is one of the premier options in hyper offense. You could make the argument for A tier, but I think B tier is correct right now. I still think stuff like Instant and Chen Pao is still annoying to deal with for sure. All right, Executor, again, mostly on some of those Sun teams. Yes, Sleep Powder is a thing. Yes, Expanding Force is a thing with Indeedee, of course. And yes, you are a Chlorophyll abuser, just like Jump Pluff, but I still think Jump Pluff is the better option to do that with. And in fact, I'm just going to put that right here, where the Jump Pluff is exactly what you want it to do, right? Be that Chlorophyll, Sun Sleeper, along with Tailwind support, right? So the Jump Pluff role hasn't changed, right? Outside of the Sun teams, you're just not going to see it. All right, after that, we've got the regular Weezing, same thing. Again, Weezing is annoying, okay? And because of that, I'm going to put it with the rest of these Kanto guys. You know, things need abilities, right? Like Photosynthesis, the other thing, like Intimidate, Incineroar stuff, right? Weather Control. You know how annoying Weezing is, right? And you're still going to see Weezing teams, okay? But they need still some support, especially now that Landorus is back. And you can't alternate your Protects anymore, right? Because Urshifu is back. So that being said, you still have to, you know, work to use the best effects of the Weezing. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a threat. And, you know, on certain teams, it can be a good niche option here. All right, now, Magmar and Electabuzz, you know, again, same thing. These bulky Eviolite redirectors, just like Clefairy, but I think Clefairy is the better Eviolite redirector of the two. Yes, we know that they were very useful against Sneasler stuff, but here's the thing. The Sneasler is not nearly as dominant as it was in the Regulation H format. Therefore, because Sneasler value is down, I would say Magmar and Electabuzz's value is down as well. Not to the point where you can't really make use of them, right? But you have to give a very good reason why you would even use these two if it weren't for the Sneasler stuff, right? Because again, the whole selling point was Vital Spirit along with Terra Ghost, which meant no close combat and no Dire Claw shenanigans for sleep effects from the Sneasler. That's what they were useful for, besides the occasional Will-O-Wisp, the Electrowebs, right? They are still relatively bulky, but there are more things that can hit harder now, which means their value does drop a little bit also, right? And for all those reasons, I think C tier is correct for where we want it to be. All right, Gyarados, again, so no Miraidon, right? There is Raging Bolt in the meta now, so you do have to be aware of that. And for that reason, I still think it's a relatively niche Intimidate option. I don't really know if you need it. I think Instant and Landorus is all that's necessary, but you know, just like regular Arcanine, I can still see some value out of regular Gyarados here. It's still pretty decent into Water Urshifu, right? So, because again, you are a Flying type, so you resist close combat, and you are a Water type, which means you resist Surging Strikes, and you get to Intimidate it, right? So there's that. And you know, that being said, I still think there's other options for Urshifu if you explore a little bit. Like, I still think Ogerpon's a better check to it, right? Besides the Gyarados, so you don't need to Intimidate it, right? You have the Follow Me with the Water Absorb, and you get the grass coverage, right? Gyarados, if it wants to really KO the Urshifu, it has to go Terra Blast, Terra Flying, right? And you don't want to burn a Terra for that. But at the very least, I still think, you know, it can fit on some teams. I still think C tier is correct. You're not really going to see it on some of the stronger, more common meta teams. Of course, this is like something if you really wanted to explore on ladder. But, you know, I almost put it in the don't use tier just because there's so much Raging Bolt. All right, regular Articuno. You saw what this could do back in the first Regulation H there, right? Of course, with that Alolan Ninetales team, right? But that's really what it comes down to. It needs the Ninetales. You're not going to see Kanto Articuno without the Ninetales. So yes, it can be solid, right? Yes, it is annoying, but it's only annoying because of the Ninetales, okay? Without the Ninetales, it's not nearly as annoying. You've got a whole lot more threats to it, but the Ninetales is a big difference maker. So at the very least, yes, it can be a fun team to use. Shoutouts to Nikhil, right? But at the end of the day, you need the Ninetales. And that you are not nearly as standalone as some of these other A tier or S tier options. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I think low B tier is correct. But again, it does need the Ninetales. If not, definitely within the C tier. Regular Zapdos, you know, regular Zapdos is one of my more favorite options here. Now, again, with the regular Zapdos, you have the Rocky Helmet idea. Let me just put this on the board here. Like, you can be this super bulky set with Rocky Helmet, right? And then Static, you know, for paralysis. You do get access to Tailwind, right? And then you also get access to Roost, which means you're super annoying. You're this bulky redirector that can deal, you know, chip damage with Thunderbolt, right? And the Urshifu doesn't want to mess with you because, again, it could get paralyzed, and then, you know, you still have electric and flying coverage against it, right? Which is, again, super annoying. You also get access to something like, what's that other flying? What other flying moves does it get here? I think this is like one of the main problems. But oh, you do get access to Hurricane, right? But again, you know, with Hurricane, again, it's nice into the Ogre Ponds, right? So you can deal big damage into them, but the problem is Hurricane is not like super accurate, right? So you do have to be aware of that. I think this is better in like one of the other formats besides Reg F. But at the very least, you can get some value out of the Zapdos. I think C tier is correct for it. I don't know too many Kanto Zapdos teams, right? Same thing with Galarian Articuno. Again, the Incineroar stuff is still a problem. If you really wanted expanding force shenanigans, there are better options. But at the very least, you do get competitive. So, you know, you can get a boost that way. But again, that doesn't mean anything in front of an Incineroar because you are a Dark type. So at the very least, yeah, you do get Trick Room. So you can be that idea, and you can still do something into Urshifu in some cases. I just don't think it's worth the work, but it can work, right? Now, the Galarian Zapdos, on the other end, I think you can get a little bit more value out of, right? And because of that, I think we can bump it up slightly. I think the low B tier is okay. Now, with this Zapdos, just like the other Articuno, you get some kind of anti-intimidate option here. And you also get access to Tail. So let me put Zapdos here. Right? You do get Defiant. And fighting coverage is important, right? Because again, that's really strong into Incin. Right? And then at the same time, you also get access to this Tailwind idea. So you're an anti-intimidate mon with access to Tailwind. That's good. Right? You can definitely find value on certain teams for sure. So if you just partner this next to some physical option, then you're in business. What's also really cool with this Zapdos is you get access to coaching too, right? So you can always see some niche ideas with this, and then you can probably just put a sash on this, right? So Tailwind, coaching, and Defiant, you're gonna find some use in some teams. So I think C tier / low B tier is correct for what we wanted to do. The Moltres here, so with the return of Fluttermane, that's not all that great. Same thing with Arcanine here. There is Chenpao, there is Raging Bolt, there is Urshifu Surging Strikes that outspeeds it. Yes, Berserk is a thing. So you do have some value against some of the other Ogre Ponds for sure. But I still think Moltres can be okay. Like, you do need stuff like Sinisha or Comfey for healing, and even Amoonguss technically, right? Landorus used to be a pretty good option for it, just because you have that electric immunity, right? And you could always Earthquake next to Moltres. So you can still make it work, right? I just think with these special attackers running around, that Moltres' value goes down a little bit. But again, C tier is correct. I think if Moltres is something that you want to build around of, I think you're gonna have to work harder than if you chose another option to build around of. But still okay. All right, Dragonite here. Again, now that Chen-Pao is back, I still think D-Knight is within the A tier. Again, in the H format, it was all about Scale Shot, Tailwind, Haze. Now that Chen-Pao is back, you're gonna see those Choice Band sets rise up yet again. And then, you know, Extreme Speed is gonna hit harder. You got, you know, hard-hitting Dragon type moves like Outrage, of course, Ice Spinner and whatnot. So yeah, I think Dragonite Chen-Pao teams are going to be a thing that you have to pay attention to. So because of that, I think Dragonite definitely deserves the A tier slot here. All right, so from here I can see Politoed and Kindred coming up here. So I think both of these are within the C tier. Of course, you might try some Perish stuff with the Rain ideas. Maybe you might even slap these onto like Archelodon stuff. But ideally, you know, you can always do like Instant, Among Us, Gothitelle stuff if you really wanted to do that kind of thing. But again, at the end of the day, I think Kingdra is just like, right? You know, it's not Dynamax era, but you know, you can still make Politoed work relatively okay, right? I definitely think C tier is correct. Same thing with Murkrow. Again, now that Tornadus is back, that's like another really, really strong Prankster user. So there's lesser need for the Murkrow, and then you still have Whimsicott too, right? So I think Murkrow can still go there and still make some value within the C tier, because again, you still get access to Haze, which can be valuable. The Porygon is still pretty good. Now, there is Urshifu, right? And that's like the main thing that you have to consider, the fact that Urshifu is back in the meta, which means you have another thing that can hit the P2 relatively hard with. But that being said, I still like P2, you know, on some of those Instant Among Us Trick Room teams. I still think even in that kind of format, Regulation H, P2 was like in the high B tier, low A tier. And I don't think that changes even though Urshifu is back. All right, Smeargle, you know, we did see a little bit of exploration in Regulation H towards the end, right? And you'll probably see it a little bit more in Vegas coming up in LAIC. And I still think you'll more or less see this similar ideas too in Regulation F, where it'll get explored more. But it wasn't really explored as much in the first time in the first go-around of Reg F. But again, Spore, Follow Me, Fake Out Pressure, Wide Guard are still like a very valuable set. Decorate is still an option, right? So I still think it'll fit on some of these balanced teams relatively well, especially with Raging Bolt. Decorate Raging Bolt is going to be annoying. I got to tell you this right now. So the fact that you can have Smeargle onto these Raging Bolt teams just means, again, it'll definitely see a little bit more play. You might even see this bump up even higher within the ranks as it gets explored a little bit further. Hitmontop, like I always put this thing in the C tier. Like in my opinion, you can just put this in the don't use pile. Like but there's always going to be a guy like, well, wait a minute, you could get it like Fake Out, Wide Guard, Close Combat. You don't need damage, right? If you're doing like the Fake Out, Wide Guard stuff. So that's my interpretation there. And you know, there's another one that can also do that job here. Did I put the Mienshao in the don't use tier? I think I did, right? I don't think you even need that, right? So in my opinion, I think this can just go down there. But you know, if you really wanted to make use of that, sure. I think in the end, I'm just gonna put this in the don't use pile. Now, Entei is another good solid option, just like, you know, Arcanine here. Again, an aggressive fire type that you can easily slap on to a Chen-Pao idea. Where's that? All right, so you could easily just do this. Then you could add the Water Ogre Pond, for example, right? And now you got this Fire Water Grass Core with Chen-Pao that can make all of these things hit even harder, right? And this could be the basis of a physical Fire Water Grass Core kind of thing. Sacred Fire, right? You don't need a Ho-Oh to do that. And then you still have the Choice Band, Terra Normal, Extreme Speed stuff the same way as Dragonite can do, except now you're faster, right? And then you have access to Inner Focus. You can't get intimidated, unlike the Arcanine that can. So that's the idea there. I think Entei is a really, really strong option right now. So definitely within the A tier for sure. Suicune. So Suicune can be a decent support option. I'm going to put it right here, maybe in like the solid but need support here. Now again, you still have to watch out for Rillaboom and Raging Bolt there, but Suicune still has some pretty good bulk. Like you get access to Tailwind, right? Again, Icy Wind support, and then you have Snarl ideas, and then you still get Scald, right? So this is always going to be like a solid set. Maybe you don't even need all four. Maybe you can still run like Protect with Leftovers, for example. But again, with the speed control here, then the damage mitigation, right? And then you can still have inner focus here. Like, look at Suicune's bulk, like triple digits all across the board. So it's not like Rillaboom and Raging Bull can like one-shot this thing, you know? Technically, Woodhammer is important, right? And it can one-shot you. But again, if you go like with this bold investment, I think you can definitely survive there, right? So that being said, you know, what you can also do is if you have Suicune on the same team as something like a Flutter Mane, you don't necessarily need the double Icy Wind. I think one can free up the slot for the other. So if you run Icy Wind here, then you don't need Icy Wind here, and vice versa, right? And then you can add like a coverage move like Dazzling Gleam in its place. And then over here, you can just put Protect if you run Icy Wind over here. So at the very least, there is that kind of synergy there. So I do like that. And for that reason, I still think lower B tier is okay. Tyranitar, again, another really, really good Regulation H threat that suffers at the hand of Urshifu, right? And now there's even Water Pond back. So value here goes down for Tyranitar. That being said, I still think it's a pretty decent option in some cases because, you know, you can find some ideas with it. But, you know, again, like I said, the Urshifu is back. The Sacred Sword Chien-Pao is back. The Landorus is back. So all of those legends that, you know, can deal big damage into the teach are bumping down a little bit. And now we go into Blaziken. Again, this is that niche idea with the coaching set, with the focus sash. So you can still do something like that if you really want to. I don't think it's worth it. Now you have Ludicolo stuff here. You know, again, another C tier option, just like, you know, Polito Kingdra stuff. Pelipper there. Again, lower B tier. Again, now that you have access to Rain Dance Tornadus, and now that there's no Miraidon, that, you know, makes it so that Pelipper is still a pretty good option, right? Where you still get like weather control on your side, you still have Hurricane Pressure against another Urshifu. You can also do like Pelipper Urshifu ideas, right? Those are still within the realm, right? And then you can still have Rain with Archelodon, of course. So I still think Pelipper is a decent option to have here. And then Torkoal, again, same thing. But you know, Torkoal I think has just slightly a little bit more value, right? Just because you can also play this in Trick Room sweeping games, or you can also play it as a support for the Photosynthesis mons. So, you know, where do you really want to put it? Do you want to put it in like, I don't think it's like A tier, but I think it's definitely better than like low B. So I think maybe just the high B is correct here, something like this. Yeah, I definitely still like Torkoal in a lot of games. You know, you might even just consider low A tier just because, again, that sweeping potential under Trick Room teams is still there. And now you have even more value because you have that support for the Photosynthesis stuff there. So it's close. I may bump Torkoal back down here, but I think low A tier is like correct there. The Milotic, again, same thing here. You know, more Raging Bolt is back. Like, again, you can still pressure some of the fire types that are running around, and you still have anti-intimidate stuff on your side. But again, there's better Defiant users and competitive moms if you know, understand what I'm saying here. Dusclops. So Clops is an interesting one, right? Because again, we did see a little bit of exploration in Regulation H. And you know, it is rather bulky, right? But again, with the rise of like, again, the Dark Urshifu and the other dark types, and now there's another knockoff user like a Roaring Moon there. So yes, you can still make it work on like some of these Trick Room teams with Ursaluna. But at the end of the day, I still think it's a rather niche Trick Room option. I think the P2 is a bit of a better choice, but you know, you can still make it work. All right, Salamence here. So, you know, Intimidate support, just like just like Incin and Landorus there. Right, I still think Salamence is a little bit slightly better than the C tier. I'm gonna put it in the low B tier. Like, yes, you know, Hurricane Pressure, Air Slash stuff for the Ogre Ponds is important there, and this is like the one selling point over Roaring Moon. Like, even though, you know, you are a little bit slower, you do get Intimidate on your side, so you can intimidate like all these Ogre Ponds, right? So, and then deal pressure right back with something like an Air Slash. You don't have to commit the Terraflying acrobatic stuff, so you can still do, you know, there's the plus there. But Roaring Moon is just really good too, right? So I still think solid B tier is where we want the Salamence. I think low on the lower end, of course. Metagross, again, more Urshifu, more Chien-Pao, more Chi-Yu. Flutter Mane is back. It's going to be hard to use Metagross. Not unplayable by any means. I think Assault Vest is the best way to go. You can definitely see some stuff with Gouging Fire Howl. I think that was done already in the first go around of Regulation F, but I don't think it's worth it. I think that was like the one good team with it. Now, after this, now we have the Latios and Latias. So I think, you know, once upon a time, like at the beginning of Reg F, like Latias was like one of the hottest new toys to like see the format. And then people realized, wait, we have like Flutter Mane, we have Roaring Moon, we have we have Chen-Pal, right? And then so it does get a little bit tricky, but at the same time, the one selling point with Latias over Latios is of course the bulk versus damage, right? So Latios, you know, has the 130 damage, Latias is 110, and then Latias has a little bit more bulk, right? And then you still get this Tailwind support. You still have Icy Wind ideas if you want to go for that, right? So it's not like it's chopped over. And then Levitate is still pretty solid. Okay, and then you have the Psychic damage against the Water Urshifu. So I still think it's a good mod. I still think somewhere within the low B tier, I think it's correct. And, you know, the Latios might even be the same thing, but I think even in the niche tier is correct there. I think there's only like one good idea with the Latios right now, whereas at least Latias, you can slap this onto a couple of balanced teams and then provide the Tailwind support that way. But you still need the, you know, to support it a little bit against some of those dark types. Gastrodon, same thing, a little bit more of a niche option. You know, you do get access to Clear Smog and Yawn and Earth Power and whatnot. And ground coverage is going to be important because, like, look at all these fire types that are back. Like, again, Entei, Gouging Fire, Hisuian Arcanine, even Chiyu there. So, like, you know, Gastrodon does have some value, right? Raging Bolt has a hard time sometimes hitting the Gastrodon because you are that ground type. So there is a bit of a niche idea for it in this format, which is why I'm going to put it there in the C tier. Same thing with Bronzong here. I think Bronzong, again, another good, solid niche option. The Ursalunas have a hard time hitting this thing because of Levitate, and you have the Steel type, you know, resisting the normal stuff. So, again, another niche Trick Room option there, just like Dusclops here, that, again, still has to watch out for Dark and Psychic, Dark and Ghost type attacks. So I think niche is definitely correct here. Now we go into Garchomp here. Again, pretty good into Raging Bolt. The fact that you can outspeed it is nice, but I think Landorus is just a little bit better of the ground type right now. Yes, of course, you still outspeed the base 100s technically, right? So there's still like some value for Chomp, just not nearly as much as what you saw in Regulation Age. So I think somewhere here within this C or B tier, I'm gonna put it in the C tier. I think you know, it kind of hurts me to put the Chomp in the C tier, but it's just Landorus and the Ursalunas are just better ground types, right? So like, we don't really need the Chomp. I think C tiers are okay. Even Rhyperior, same thing here. Like, at least you get Lightning Rod, which is helpful for Raging Bolt, but again, you don't really need it. I think there's better ground types. Like I said, the Landoruses are going to be better. You know, and I'm staring at a few of these, like Excadrill, Mamoswine, right? Same thing. Like, again, Mamoswine at least gives you ice coverage, right? And then you don't really care so much about the Intimidate stuff. And you still have priority Ice Shard stuff, so you can even put this, you know, in certain hyper aggressive teams, you know, with Earthquake stuff. But again, also relatively niche. Gallade, again, also, you know, pretty good on those Trick Room teams, you know, with Indeedee and stuff. But outside of that, you're not really going to see it. Now, Heatran is a good mod in this format, right? I think either like very good or like low tier A. And it's really strong into the Flutterfish stuff, right? Like Flutter Mane and Chiyu. Because again, you can't take fire damage. In fact, you want them to click the fire move because you have Flash Fire. You resist the fairy move from Flutter Mane. And then, you know, a lot of these Flutter Manes, they even drop Shadow Ball because they want Icy Wind / Taunt stuff. So some of them don't even have Shadow Ball. And then at the same time, you also get access to Earth Power and Flash Cannon, which is great into both the Chiyu and the Flutter Mane. And the Chiyu is making you do more damage because, again, of Beta Root. So I do like Heatran in certain balanced teams as well as some of the hyper aggressive teams. I think Magma Storm variants are also pretty good where you can trap things. I do think high B tier is correct with the Heatran based on those tools alone. Okay, where else are we? All right, Cresselia. I like, again, I know. I think again Cresselia is also really solid. Like, it's super bulky. Like the Cresselia Ursaluna stuff is annoying to deal with, right? And you're gonna see that a little bit more. Now, of course, there is Chien-Pao, you know, with Sucker Punch play, but you know, you're not really worried about Sucker Punch, right? You're more worried about like Dark Urshifu, right? And then of course Flutter Mane clicking Shadow Ball. That's not gonna kill unless it's like the Specs variant, okay? And you know, the fact that it also has Levitate is also important. And then the healing ability with the Trick Room stuff. You know what Cresselia can do. I think its bulk is good. Like, again, yes, you do have to watch out for like Roaring Moon and some of these other dark types running around, like Chi-Yu, for example, and Flutter Mane. But the bulk and the Trick Room setup and the healing goes a long way. And it gets other speed control moves like Icy Wind and Thunder Wave too, right? So I think very good is correct here as one of the better support mons to run in this format for sure. Then we've got Little Excadrill, again, another niche ground type here. Again, you know, if Tyranitar is down, then Excadrill is down too. So, you can be fast in the sand, but I don't think it's necessary this time around. Same thing here with Lycanroc. Like Lycanroc, again, Focus Sash Endeavor stuff, same thing. Like, yes, you get Rock Slide, but you know, there's better offensive tools than the Lycanroc here. Whimsicott, you know, again, another really, really good option. Again, still just like Tornadus, is going to be within good use here, especially on some of those hyper offensive teams. Tailwind, Moonblast, Sunny Day stuff, Encore. Whimsicott wants to run like 10 different moves there. Its role has not changed despite these legends coming back. I think it's a great support mon. I think A tier or even high B tier is correct here. The Hisuian Lilligant, again, it's just really with those Torkoal teams. You know, after your Eruption plays, Sleep Powder stuff, we know what this thing is supposed to do. Outside of the Sun teams, you're not really going to see it. Same thing with Gothitelle. If you want to run Perish, go for it. Just make sure, you know, you play it just as good as Wolf Glick. All right, here we go. Amoonguss, another S tier threat here. Now, some of you might say, nah, I would put it in the A tier. You can make that argument, right? But listen, you know, there's no Miraidon, right? And that's very good for Amoonguss. Okay, and even with Miraidon, Amoonguss was still within top usage. So, you know, Trick Room matchup, you need something, Amoonguss is your guy, right? Spore Pressure, healing abilities, like instant Amoonguss Raging Bolt is just a hardcore sometimes to break, just because these are all super bulky Pokemon. Now you add healing with Pollen Puff with the Amoonguss, right? You also get access to Clear Smog if you need it. The Mushroom will always be a mainstay in VGC, right? Volcarona is still another really, really good fire type that you can take advantage of. Like, again, I still think very good is correct here. You might even bump this up into A tier potentially, but again, Quiver Dance setup, that hasn't really changed, and it's still going to do more or less the same stuff in Regulation F as well. Here we go. Finally, Tornadus. We've spoken a lot about this thing. Now, here we are. Again, another S tier threat here. Tailwind idea, like, again, the face of the hyper offensive ideas, right? You start with it, okay? Because again, you got stuff like you know, Tornadus, Rain Dance, right? With Urshifu is oppression. We know that already. Okay, then you add the Flutter Mane stuff, right? So where's Flutter Mane? All right, so you don't even have to go Rain Dance. You could even just go like Sunny Day, right? And then add the I added Flutter Mane back here. You can even add the Chi-Yu here, right? So now, like we showed you earlier, this is the essence of some of those hyper aggressive teams. Then you could even add the Ogre Pond here, right? The Wellspring one, and then add stuff like Chien-Pao, right? And maybe even Dragonite, for example, right? I'm just making stuff up here, but I'm just showing you, like, this could be another hyper aggressive team. You could even add Flutter Mane Landorus here, right? You get the double Genie idea, but, you know, tons of support tools with this thing. Like, you even get access to Prankster Taunt if you want, right? And then, of course, you still have the occasional Bleakwind Storm. Now, that being said, you get other things that you want to use the Tornadus for. It even gets Icy Wind yourself, so you can even beat the Tailwind Mirror, right? So you can even run this kind of set with Covert Cloak, for example. Some of these are also just running Rocky Helmet, just to, again, hurt the Urshifu. You can even EV this to survive Surging Strikes, right? So, again, really, really good Prankster user now. I think it's better than Whimsicott. And again, the Hurricane Pressure just gives it the edge over Whimsicott because now you can hit the Ogerpons for big damage. Landorus here, to me, another S tier threat. Meta defining. Again, look at all these A tier mons. How many of these things are weak to Landorus ground moves? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 of these things, right? Like, and then even Raging Bolt. Like, Raging Bolt has a hard time dealing with Landorus, right? And then you add the Sludge Bomb idea. Now you can hit the Ogerpons, okay, which hurts a lot. So you can even do like Icy Wind, Floodamane, Sludge Bomb into the Ogerpons, right? Because the Ogerpons can outspeed you, right? But again, really good into Raging Bolt, great into like even Heatran, for example, right? Hisuian Arcanine doesn't want to be taking this. Entei doesn't want to be taking this. Archelodon, Iron Crown, same thing. So really, really good value out of this Landorus right now, okay? Then we get into the other genie, this one. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to put this one in the S tier. That being said, you still get some nice tools, right? You still get Thunder Wave, you still get Eerie Impulse for damage mitigation, all right? And then you can even go like Wild Bolt Storm, of course, if you really want to. I just think it's relatively niche. Where's that? Yeah, right here. Same thing with this guy. This is the other offensive one. I think this is even worse. Like there's better, like if you wanted an aggressive electric type, just use Raging Bolt. You don't need this Thunderous. Okay, it's not as bulky. But you can still get some good value out of the Prankster one. I still think it's okay. All right, this Landorus, the Therian form. So I think it's also somewhere within the realm of A and high B tier. I'm gonna put it here. Again, Intimidate support besides the Incineroar, and it's a ground type. So that means good value into Raging Bolt. Right, you get to intimidate the Chentpals, you get to intimidate all of these guys that doesn't want to be taken in, and you deal big damage with Earthquake against all of them, right? A lot of these. I'm not saying like all of them, okay? And you also can have access to like stuff like U-turn where you can pivot out, just like Incineroar, right? We've seen that before classically. So definitely good value out of this Landorus. You might even put it in the A tier. I think high B tier is correct right now, but we'll see what happens. I think we may even just bump this up, but we'll see. The Talonflame, again, if you really want to Tailwind, like, Tornadus is back, Whimsicott is back. Well, Whimsicott was always here. Okay. I just think it's more of a niche pick right now. Again, I think Tornadus just, kind of takes over, with Whimsicott taking over whatever it didn't. So there is some niche. Again, at least you have Brave Bird into the Ogerpons, right? So there's that. But besides that, what else are you really doing with it? Sylveon, again, we have Fluttermane back. So, at the very least, you have like a bulkier version of a fairy type because Fluttermane is a little bit frail. You also get Yawn support. So there's going to be some niches for Sylveon too. Same thing with like the Hisuian Gudra. I think the Gudra, again, with like Iron Defense Body Press stuff, makes it a pretty decent option. You can definitely get some good value out of the Gudra. So, where can we put it? I think you can even put it like in like low B tier, but even then, I still that might be a bit of a stretch. I think still C tier is correct here, because again, there's other slots that you can definitely put in if you really needed a matchup check into something. I can't find some, like, if you really wanted Body Press, I think Archelodon is just a little bit better, right? You can even deal like special attack damage with it, whereas Gudra doesn't really do that for you. But you can still definitely make it work. Here we go, another S tier threat. Incineroar, the VGC GOAT, right? All the championships, all the regional wins, okay? All the parting shots, all the fake outs, all the Wolf Glick memes, okay? Incin will forever be the S tier threat that it is, right? Damage mitigation, fake out pressure, pivoting with parting shot and U-turn. You got good stats, okay? You got dark fire typing, which means the fairy weakness gets neutralized because of your fire typing, right? And the slow parting shot helps a lot, okay? So yeah, I don't really need to talk about Incin. It's going to be that S tier threat. Now we got Primarina here. Again, same thing. Like, again, you got the fairy type fine with you already. I guess you can put this in the niche tier. Again, you still get like hyper voice stuff with throat spray. You can do like a choice specs variant, right? You can knock out two. You can have 2 slots there with the water fairy type. So like dragon, fairy, steel, fire, water, grass. So at least you can get double rolls there. Is it necessary? I don't know. In this type of format, it was already like kind of niche in Reg H. Now I think it's even more niche. But I'll give it respect because I still think it's a decent bond here. You know, we only got like 2.5 lines left, right? Because again, you know, you don't have like the big legends here. All right, Araquanid, C tier. Again, outside of Trick Room stuff with Water Bubble, you're not really gonna see it. It's not bad, of course. Serena, again, also pretty good into like Raging Bolt stuff because again, Queenly Majesty, you're denying like priority stuff, especially the fake out stuff. So I can definitely see some good value out of Serena. But that being said, I still think, you know, Rillaboom is still better, but definitely good. It's a decent mod that you can definitely make use of. All right, we got Comfey here again. The healing abilities with Trick Room, again, still relatively niche. Outside of that, I think Amoonguss is the better, slower healing mon there. Then you got Como, which can give you some decent value here. I'm gonna say very good. I think in Regulation H, even though it's a different format, you're starting to see the rise of Como because again, it has like good support tools. Those tools haven't really changed in F. In fact, you're getting more. And you know, I do like its setup ability in this kind of format here, and I think very good is correct here. Don't sleep on Como, right? Again, you have all these dragons, okay, but I think Como will definitely find a spot because look how many of these things are weak to dragon and fighting stuff here. A lot, right? So don't get me started here, but I think you'll definitely get some good value. Like, you know, with Sinistra, Amoonguss stuff, like the support ideas, you know, haven't really changed. I still think it's good. Here we go, another one. Rillaboom here, right? The fake out boys are always gonna be supreme. Fake outs setup, okay, is prime balance, okay? Right here, you got a lot of Raging Bolt balance here, okay? With Calm Mind stuff, okay? So stay tuned. What else is here? Corviknight was really good into like Sneasler stuff, but because Sneasler isn't, quote, as good, I think you get a little bit drop in value. But I still think it's like solid. You just need to be aware of Raging Bolt. But you're still gonna have some decent value into stuff like Fluttermane. Landorus can't really hit you all that well, right? So you have that going for you at least, right? Just watch out for Fire Ogre Pond and stuff. Okay. NDD Hatterene stuff. Again, Hatterene will always be in C tier because again, just only really Trick Room stuff that you're really gonna see it. Grimmsnarl, the GOAT, but you know, again, I always got to be honest with myself, man. I'm gonna say it's low B tier. Like, I'm not gonna submit and say like this is a C tier mana. Grimmsnarl with screen support is still pretty good. You'll get some value just like Ninetales, but you know, outside of the screens, you know, you do have the Ninetales for that too. Thunder Wave is a thing. Fake Out is a thing. Parting Shot is a thing. All it takes is one Parahax for you to lose a round and get out of day 2, right? And Grimmsnarl can do that for you. Okay, the 2 Indeedis. I think the female one is much better. All right, again, it's bulkier. You do get access to Trick Room, not that the other one doesn't. But the bulk is very much appreciated. And whereas the male one, okay, I think it's somewhere here in like low B and then niche tier. I'm not really sure where you can definitely make use of it. Maybe here. This is Reg F, right? Is it niche? Nah, I'm gonna put it here and like it's still like okay. You can still do some hyper aggressive stuff, but I think the female NDD is just way better. Like Follow Me support goes a long way. Dragapult there again, C tier here. Now that there's Fluttermane, Chenpao back, it's a little bit harder to use Pult. Reggie Alecki, man, same thing. Like, you know, this is gonna be one of those ideas where like, again, maybe there will get some exploration with the Lecky, but you got Raging Bolt now, man, and there's Landorus back, so it's harder for Alecki. This isn't Dynamax format, right? So can it still work? Yeah, because you know you can still be the fastest thing running around, besides Booster Energy Flutter Mane. But you don't really need E-Webs anymore if you've got Icy Wind, Booster Energy, Flutter Mane, right? So that's why I think it's going to be niche. All right, Regidrago, again, can be a really, really good offensive threat, but you do need Tailwind support from something like a Tornadus, and you need help against the priority stuff, because priority into Regidrago will make it do less damage, right, with Dragon Energy. So again, solid, but needs support. That's what we're talking about here with the lower B tier. All right, the 2 horses here, and then the Ursalunas, right? So like these are all very, very good Trick Room threats. Again, Glastrier here, my C tier, like again, great stats, right? Very, very good. Can be a good Trick Room sweeper, right? But again, why use this when you can also use Ursaluna? But that being said, you know, 30 speed tier better than 50, okay? But same thing here, Spec tier, you can make this offensive. You can also make this supportive. But if you're looking for an offensive and supportive ghost type, just use Flutter Mane, right? So what good do you need the Spec tier for? That being said, you can sweep potentially because you have Grim Nabus, right? But I think Flutter is just a better option. All right, the Ursalunas, I think they're both in the A tier, man. Like these are really, really good options. You can almost put one or both into the S tier, and you'll make the argument at some point, but we'll see where the format takes us. But right now, high A tier uses for sure, without a doubt. Basculegion, again, you can, you know, now that there's Raging Bolt back, it's going to be a little bit harder. Same thing with like Sucker Punch, Chenpao stuff. The Ogre Pawns are back now. So it's going to be a little bit harder to use the Basculegion, but it can still do what it does on the rain teams. You just have to be a little bit careful. Maybe just B tier, but probably C tier technically, right? Just because we got Urshifu back. We don't need Basculegion technically anymore. Here we are. Sneasler, right? This is not a Sneasler meta, okay? Where do we want to put this? I think I'm thinking about it. I'm looking at the C tier. You're definitely not A tier anymore, and I don't think you're high B tier. So the question is, do we put this in the C tier? Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna just leave it here. I almost want to put in the don't use tier, but you know, I'm sure there's gonna get some exploration with like some psychic seeds or grassy seed stuff there. So for the record, I'll put it in the niche tier, but I just want people to know that in the first go around of Regulation F, this thing was not used as much. All right. So that being said, where else are we looking at here? Skeledirge, again, kind of like Clefable. It's just this unaware user that, you know, is annoying with like yawn stuff and slack off and healing. I don't know, man. I don't think that's worth it. Yeah, I'll put it in the niche tier. I may even just put this in the don't use tier. I was thinking about it for a second. I was like, I don't care. Maushold, okay. So Urshifu's back, right? So that tells another thing. So like Mouse Ape thing might be on the down low here. But that being said, Maushold can still get some value here. I still think, you know, Friend Guard is still good. Follow Me stuff is annoying. And for that reason, I still think you can get some good value out of this. Just like Clefairy, like Friend Guard is still like going to be pretty good here. All right, Armarouge, again, same thing. Trick Room stuff, you know, relatively niche. Like, of course, Indeedee Hatterene, Indeedee Armarouge, whatever you want to call it. Like, all these Trick Room tools, they'll always be in the niche tier. And, you know, I like Armarouge. I think Armarouge can still be okay, like, even outside of Trick Room somewhat. But its best role is there, right? So I'm going to just keep it there in the C tier. And now you got Tinkaton there. So at the very least, you can fake out the Ferrigraph, right? Because of Mold Breaker stuff there. Yeah, again, you know, you could have did that last format, and even then it wasn't even usable. So, who knows? Well, we might even just drop it. But, okay, Orthworm definitely has a niche value here, okay? Like, with all the ground types running around, especially like Landorus, and the Ursalunas and whatnot, you know, you can get some good value out of it. And at the same time, you know, Raging Bull's going to have an annoying time against you. And I think Orthworm, we did see a little bit of in the first go around in Regulation F. It did have some niche, right? You know, you can even just talk to Hamster Mania, right? David Kutesh. All right, Glamora. So Glamora hyper offense stuff, I'm going to put here in the A tier. Glamora is a good mon, okay? And you'll probably see it a lot on these kinds of teams here. All right, let me add Glamora. Like the toxic debris stuff, the earth power is strong into Raging Bolt there. And you know, you'll even see this on some of these Dondozo teams too, right? So I do like Glamora. It's one of my favorite mons that's like not a legend in Scarlet and Violet. So I might be a little bit more biased, but you know, you do still have to watch out for Urshifu Surging Strikes, right? But at the same time, you know, 130 special attack, no legends, so pretty decent value, okay? And look how hard you hit a lot of these mons, right? And the fact that you get access to Sludge Bomb is huge because that lets you hit the ogres, especially if you have Icy Wind support. That's big because Tailwind plus Sludge Bomb into these ogres, they don't want to take. Tailwind, Earth Power, a lot of these things don't want to take, even though it is non-stab. You got Power Gem or / Meteor Beam into Instant. That's strong, okay? And then you're strong into Tornadoes too. So you can beat a lot of these, you know, offensive threats with Glamora, right? And even stuff in the B tier, like Glamora looks really good against a lot of these mons. So, you know, if you're ground or if you're weak to ground, great. We got Earth Power. If you are a flying type, we got the Rock move. And then if you're grass stuff, then you got the Sludge Bomb. So I think Glamora is looking excellent on those hyper offensive teams. Now we've got Flamigo. Again, same idea. Again, relatively niche here. Like, it was niche enough on those Porygon teams. I still think it's relatively niche. All right, here we go. Dondozo Tatsugiri. All right, I'm gonna say very good. I'm not gonna put in like amazing, like strong and consistent, but it's still a threat you have to respect. Okay, and if anything, I almost want to put Dozo slightly higher than Tatsugiri because you can still play Dondozo without the Tatsugiri, right? Like I said earlier, you still have the Yawn, the Tinglu Dondozo idea that's going to be annoying and running around. So if anything, you know, you can even almost bump this into, or even at least bump down the Tatsugiri into the low B tier. But I'll keep them together for now. But again, Commander, Dozogiri is still something you need to respect for sure. All right, Annihilate, again, you know, Fluttermane's back. And then some of these other offensive threats are back. Urshifu's back too, right? So, but still Annihilate can do something. Like, again, Final Gambit set still exists. Mousehold is still around, you know, where you can redirect and help set it up there. So I'm going to say solid but needs support, just like Mousehold over here. So I still think that's where we wanted. Even, like I said, great in Regulation H. Bump it down, bump a lot of these things down a little bit just because these big legends are back. But not the box legendaries, right? So that's the big thing. Furrygraph is good. Helps enable the Blood Moon, right? You know, we've seen these combos before. So much priority, so much fake out. Furrygraph has excellent value, okay? And then you get Trick Room on your side now. And then you can be this offensive threat with the, you know, Throat Spray with Hyper Voice and or Expanding Force if you want to explore that route, right? We've seen it already in Regulation Age. I feel like every format Furrygraph is going to be good, right? Because once people figured out, like, there's so much fake out and priority, you know, especially with like Chen Pao and Raging Bolt and the fake out boys, Furrygraph has good value. So, and it's bulky too, right? So, yeah, I do think the A tier as one of the best supports right now is really, really, really nice. Gambit, same thing. I like Gambit. I'll always, you know, it was a borderline high B tier, low A tier threat in Reg H, and I think that's exactly where it is right now. Yes, there is Urshifu, right? Yes, there is close combat, but there is less Sneasel. So, at the well, not that really changed anything. You're just trading one fire type, fighting type over another. But again, Defiant, good, right? Great in Trick Room. Okay. You can play Mind Games of Raging Bolt with your priority moves. Okay, so you got that going for you. And you can kind of catch some of these Icy Wind, Bleak Wind ideas on switching and then get a Defiant boost that way. I've done that quite a bit. And I think this is going to be still true even now. But yeah, I definitely think Gambit is still going to be solid in this meta. And it was already in the first go-around. So be ready here. Great Tusk. Again, another niche ground type. Throw that in there. Photosynthesis does make it an intriguing option, but you're gonna have to give up something if you want if you wanted to take a Photosynthesis slot. Same thing here, Screen Tail. Like, again, it's annoying, right? Like, Encore disable stuff. But you are very passive too, right? And sometimes you really want damage, and you can still play around the Encore disable stuff too. So yeah, I think niche tier is correct. And finally, we have come to Flutter Mane. Here we go, another S tier thread. We got a lot of S tier threads here. Again, you got the booster idea with Icy Wind. You know, you got the choice specs idea that's back. You can run that now, right? You know, whereas like in Regulation G, you couldn't because there's so much Legends running around. You were almost forced to run a Focus Sash. You don't need to do that in this format per se because those Legends aren't around, right? You can still invest enough bulk to survive stuff like Chen Pao, okay? So you can go with this bulky choice spec set, or you can just go with the Sash set, or you can go with the bulky booster energy set, right? So lots of sets that you can run on the Flutter Mane. But again, you pressure a lot of what's returning, okay? And you also get more support with the Chi-Yu 2 and Tornadus too, technically. So again, great mon this format. You know, maybe the best fairy that you can use, of course, without a doubt. Now, here we go. Iron Bundle. Now, I've always respected Iron Bundle, but just because you have 1 speed faster, you are 1 speed higher / faster than Flutter Mane and Chen Pao. And that means you have the faster Icy Wind, which means you get to break their Sash first. So I feel like there's going to be some niche for it, right? And I'm going to respect it. And there were some balance teams that actually did make use of it. Maybe not originally. Maybe low B tier is actually correct for this. Yeah, I'm gonna say low B tier. I think Iron Bundle can still get the job done here. This what's to say? This fake Among Us is still like okay in certain cases. Yes, there's photosynthesis, but you know this is not Koraidon stuff, right? There's no Koraidon. I'm sorry. So, if we're not in that kind of format, I think you'll be hard pressed to find more value with this this mushroom. All right, here we go. Iron Hands. Another good Pokemon here, and almost, do I want to put it in S tier? Almost. I think A tier is correct. Just like the Chi-Yu here. Again, fake out pressure. Like look at this damage, right? Of course, remember this thing? Remember how good this was even without Miraidon? Yeah, it's still pretty good without Miraidon. Okay. 154 HP, 140 attack, 108 defense. Great spread of its stats, right? Assault Vest and all. Of course, you have to be aware of the base speed 50s, like another Ursaluna or whatever, but that's never stopped Iron Hands before, right? So you're gonna have to Intimidate cycle this thing to make sure it doesn't do like a whole lot of damage, but you know, you still have this core of Iron Hands, Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and Freygraph there, right? That's always like a really solid Trick Room balance idea, okay? And if you want an electric type on your team that's not Raging Bolt, Iron Hands is your next best bet. It's really, really solid. It's super bulky too. Yeah. Okay. Then you have this thing, the future Paradox version of Hydreigon here. I'm going to say niche. Yeah. Again, Tailwind support, Snarl idea. So you got that going for you. Suicune can do that too. But, you know, again, both the Suicune and these are like relatively niche options there. Again, the flying type, you know, you can get some good value out of it, but a lot of things can still outspeed you. Again, like a Flutter Mane, like a Chen Pao, for example, like a Raging Bolt doesn't even care if you outspeed. You know, Thunderclap is threatening, but you can get some good value out of it for sure, without a doubt. And for that reason, I think niche tier is absolutely correct here. Iron Moth, okay, yeah, we did see that on that Trick Room team there with the support set, along with like, you know, a good special attacking stat. I'm sure there's some teams that can make use of acid spray stuff, but you know, again, another relatively niche option, I would say. Okay, back Scalloper, like you got to see Regulation H back's balance, right? So I still think that is also, you know, it can still do more or less that idea. Same thing like Como. I think it's a good option, but you have like Gouging Fire and Dragonite as like better dragon types you want to use. But that being said, okay, you still have priority ice damaging moves into, you know, Landorus, Tornadus, and Raging Bolt, right? And even Rillaboom. Like lots of things weak to ice. And for that reason, I think Excalibur is still going to have like good, decent value. Finally, we got the Urshifus here. So, you know, the water one, I think you can put up here in the S tier. and the Dark one not far behind, right here within the A tier. And I just put it randomly. This is not in like any specific order. So again, Surging Strikes with Tornadus in the rain, super strong. Now you add Chien-Pao, also super strong. So Tornadus, Urshifu, Chien-Pao, that could be a core for like Hyper Offense. And you know, you don't care about Protect, you crit every time. You don't care about Intimidate. Welcome back Urshifu. Dark Fu, still very good as well. You know, but going through Sash is even better, right? But again, still threatening with the Wicked Blow and the close combat for sure. And I still think it's an A tier threat. But yeah, so I think that was our last waiting to be ranked thing. So what I want to do now is I just want to quickly you know, scour over the D tier, see if there's anything there that we kind of missed that maybe we can bump up. And then after that, I also want to take a look down here and see if there's anything we could either bump up or even bump down into the D tier. Because again, we had to give some of those options a little bit of a thought there. All right, now we're gonna just briefly look over our D tier. Again, these are just things that aren't very useful right now in the Regulation F meta, or at least where we last left it off. Yeah, I'm looking at that first row, nothing really there. Snorlax, not really. And Slacking could be used with Wheezing. I don't think it's worth it. Did have some appearances in Regulation H though, so maybe you can find some use. But I still don't think it's worth it. PZ, not quite. Weavile, this is not a Sneasel meta, so it's not really necessary anymore. The Lake Trio, right? Uxie, as of now, I don't think that's necessary. Hydreigon had some value in H, but not nearly as much anymore. Same thing with Delphox. Again, all the Urshifu Chien-Pao stuff is back. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, nothing else here. Okay. Alright, you got the Quaquaval. Maybe you could try it on the Archelodon raid team, but again, we got Urshifu back. Is that really necessary? I don't know. Espathra, not necessary. Again, something in Regulation H. I don't think there's any carryover here. You know what? Hold up. There might be some value for Sandy Shocks. You know what? I think I overlooked this one. I think we can put this into the niche. The fact that it's faster than base 100s, I think goes a long way. And, you know, we'll see. Again, another ground type that you can find a niche for sure. But besides that, yeah, I think that was just the only one there. Anything here that maybe I can bump down? I don't really see any, you know, much value of some of these options here. Actually, no, I take that back. There were like, you could definitely go like 60 at a regional with some of these guys. And I've seen the results already, which is why I kind of put them here as well. Flamigo, do we really need this? I don't know. Sneasel is like something that's waiting to happen. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that. Yeah, same thing with like Zapdos here. But for now, I think we can give them some respect. I just don't think it's necessary. The one thing that I can move up for sure, I think, is the Sinisha. I think this is still like pretty solid. I think you can put this in the solid but need support idea. Again, low B tier I think would be correct here. Anything else that can go into the low B tier? I don't know. I think these are just pretty. Oh yeah, Smeargle. Smeargle is actually a demon. It had a lot of day 2 results. Like I put it in the niche tier, but I think it could even climb its way into right here, if anything. It's very threatening. I think it's gonna get explored a little bit more. But this is where I want to put it. So I'm looking at the S tier. That looks correct. The only thing in the A tier that maybe could even be bumped up, maybe even the Chia, but I think A tier is correct. Same thing with like Dragonite and the Ursalunas. I think these are like the main staples, right? And these are almost staples, but still need like a supporting partner, right? And that's kind of how I viewed the A tier. You need a good partner where you really shine. Like, can you function by yourself? Absolutely. But I think you need a good partner. Like either it's a Tailwind user or something that helps you do a little bit more damage, right? And I think that's kind of how I viewed this A tier here. Like, for example, Ursaluna's, you know, they need a Trick Room Center. So something like Fergap looks good. You know, Arcanine, Entei, they need something like a Chien-Pao, right? Otherwise, can they function by themselves? Yes. But I think they do better when they have like one more partner, right? Whimsicott plus a partner looks really good, okay? Down in the very good tier, like, you know, some of these could even be like A tier threats, but I think this is correct with a lot of these guys, especially the Dozogiri stuff here. Solid but needs support. yeah, like these were just a little bit better than the C tier stuff, but still like okay. So something like Latias and Suicune, like these are your non-prankster tailwind setters. You know, the Ninetales, same thing, like weather control, screen support still, mouse ape, yeah, like you can still see like these guys are still like okay, but they just get outclassed by everything up here, right? And then down here, like we said, the niche tier, like, you know, supporting roles, you know, really good on very specific kind of archetypes, like whether it's Sun or Trick Room. That's really what was going on down here, or something that was needed to patch up a very, very specific matchup. I think this is what we're looking at here. But yeah, this is it. This is the Regulation F meta. Okay, at least where we last left off, you know, last year with it. So hopefully this helps you structure your team building, and hopefully this gives you a sense of what you can and should play. But hey, I'm not going to tell you what to play. You know, who am I, right? Ideally, of course, you can play whatever you want as long as you have a reason to use certain Pokemon, right? So if you do want to explore something here in the D tier that I haven't, you know, looked at, right, and you can find a niche for it, absolutely, you know, definitely go for it. Don't let me stop you. I'm just trying to help those that are like completely new and have like zero idea of what to use and play, right? But if you already have a sense of what is good and what is not good, then, you know, you use your own knowledge, of course, right? Otherwise, feel free to reach out for us for help. And that said, this is where I advertise coaching. So if you're trying to go to, you know, any Regulation H events, whether it be like a cup, a local, or maybe a future regional, you know, feel free to sign up for coaching on the channel. Tier 3 sub gets you that one-on-one team building session where we get to build the team from scratch on Showdown. We get to hash out all the EVs, right? And then get you started for your Regulation F needs. Otherwise, if you want that along with help with your battling, right, where we get to give you feedback on how to use certain teams and how to optimize certain moves and how to optimize certain turns in your gameplay, that would be tier 4, where you're able to you know, take the team that we make and then just showcase it on Showdown, and then we can give you feedback, you know, with those replays, and, you know, help you advise on your play. Okay, so that would be tier 4. Either way, the link to join the channel will be in the video description. Otherwise, you can also find the same link to join the channel in the comment section, and it'll be pinned as it is always in every single video. So if you're interested in coaching, again, sign up, click the link, and, you know, feel free to reach out to us on Discord. Other than that, we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.